Mhm. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome all of you on a CAREC event, which is supported by Asian Development Bank and E-Asia Fund of Korea. And we have today the experts from Silicon Valley, Mr. Carl Deutsch and Jeff Wallace. We will have very interesting workshops for the startups and students from the region. This workshop name is Silicon Valley Innovation, separating breakthroughs from the hype. And in short period of time, they will present you a very interesting point of views, information, and knowledge which will be very useful for you in your future activities and the creation of your own startups. This workshop is going under the initiative of ADB and E-Asia Fund of Korea for the development of student startups, and especially already launched the registration for the initiative which is called CAREC University Startup Generator. Before we will start the training, I would like to shortly provide you information about this event, and after the workshop, you will be able also to ask us the question how you could participate in this event and how you could become the winner of very interesting prizes, and you could become the participant of very interesting activities. Yeah, shortly about the event. Yeah, we see that the current development of startup ecosystem on the global market, it's going not very interesting for us, and there's a more developed startup ecosystem in the world, and we should also think how to become competitive on a global market. And we also could create the startups with a world name. We could change the future of people's lives and work. And we have a lot of examples around us, but to become the real entrepreneurial, it's very important, the experience. We could see in the rankings that the startup experience is one of the most important measurement indicator to become successful in your startup journey. That's why we are offering you the program. Instead that, unfortunately, most of our universities is still more theoretical education, and the university, CAREC University Startup Generator is a tool which will help you in a practical education, in the process of creation, the team, getting the right knowledge, and using this knowledge to solve the important challenges of the current world and processes. Yeah, we could see that learning by doing is one of the most important elements for the education, and also development the soft skills. And of course, the entrepreneurship is like the learning the swimming. You can't learn it only theoretically. You should start doing, but also you have to get the important knowledge in this process. The practice which we are offering you for this platform and project, the most biggest and top universities are using in their daily operations, and we are not offering to universities to change all the processes, and we are offering them the tool which might be useful in a current operational model to improve the capacity of the students and the practical educational process. Yeah, how it looks like, we already started registration. We'll have also open doors event in January, and we are offering you very interesting events on 20th of December, and also we'll have another training on December 27th. Please keep in mind this information, and we'll provide you additional details. And also I will share the link for for the CAREC University Startup Generation in a chat, which you could use during the registration. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Jeff Wallace and Carl Deutsch from the Silicon Valley. They have a great experience of helping startups from all the world, and especially in Silicon Valley, in the process of growing, the capacity building, getting the right knowledge which will help them to be successful in the future. The floor is yours, and please, you can share your presentation and start workshop. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Irakli. It is great to be here. Why don't we just jump right in? And Jeff, would you like to do introductions?
Absolutely. Thank you, Cal. Thank you, Irakli. And it's always good to be back here with ADB and CAREC. We're excited to share our thoughts with you, you all today. So on the left-hand side of this slide are some of the larger companies, or some of the companies that I have worked at during the course of my career. I started my career on Wall Street in the finance industry, and then I moved into technology and consulting with a company called Computer Sciences Corporation. And then later in life, I joined a much bigger company even called Cognizant, and I was helping Fortune 500 companies around the world with new technology initiatives around mobile technology and things of that sort. And then the last one you see on the bottom of the left there is called Global Kinetics. That's a company I started many years ago, and we work with startups all around the world. And on the right-hand side is just a sampling of the companies that I have been, or the groups around the startup ecosystem around the world that I've been working with. I've worked in the region there in Georgia, as you can see on the middle of the side, the Georgita organization. We've worked in Romania, we've worked in Brazil, we've worked in Asia. We've really worked all around the world. We've worked with about 1,700 startups in about 40 countries. So I've been really excited to work with the groups that we've been working with in Eastern Europe. They've been very innovative and creative, and I'm excited to be here today. The last thing I will share is what I call on the bottom of that slide, my fun facts. Working here in Silicon Valley, there are certainly some incredible people that have been part of making Silicon Valley what it is. And I've had the good fortune in the course of my career to work with Steve Jobs of Apple, the founder of Apple, and also later in life when I became a speaker, I've had the opportunity to work on several occasions with Steve Wozniak. So for me, it's been an absolute privilege to be able to meet such incredible and to work with such incredible industry icons. And so for me, that's a fun fact. I hope it's interesting to you guys that I've had that chance, and I'm happy to answer questions later on about any part of that or any other part of what we talk about today. With that, I will turn it over to Cal for his introduction.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. So similar format of my slide. On the left side, you can see where I have worked in the past. On the right side, it's again a group of places around the world where I've worked with startups. So I started my career at really big companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers, the accounting firm, Wells Fargo Bank, Visa, where I served as an executive. And midway through my career, I also just caught entrepreneur fever. So HomeGain was one of the first technology companies that was a startup that I joined, did home valuation tools, things like that. So real estate tech. On the right side, again, startups from all over the world. We've worked at Berkeley, we've worked in Asia, in Europe, in Latin America, and literally now the last 7 years or so, we've basically lived and breathed startups. Little fun fact about myself, IceFan.com is a startup that I created specifically for producing what's called a mockumentary. So it's a mock documentary. It's telling a fictitious story that kind of feels like a real story. And it actually was a company that was probably one of the worst internet startups of all time, because all it did was deliver bags of ice. And we did it to basically have some fun, have some laughs, but somehow it ended up on the film festival circuit and ended up in one of the more famous film festivals in the United States called Sundance, which is started by the actor Robert Redford. A lot of fun, but again, some excesses happen with every startup cycle. And what we're talking about today is the hype cycle of different technologies. So iSpan is actually a good example of where excesses and hype lead to some bad outcomes for companies. A very quick request. It would be great to have your cameras on if possible. Cameras on make it so much more interactive and engaging and fun for us. There'll be a few things where we'll be talking and polling you for some answers. So whatever you can do to turn on the camera and be part of the conversation today would be fantastic. And like Irakli said, the more involved you are, the more you are engaged in the experience, the better the retention will be for you. So very important that we are all having this conversation together. So we're talking about technologies that basically start with hype and then eventually become something solid and real and creating real value. And a very good way of measuring this is through a company called Gartner. And it's an analyst group in the United States in Silicon Valley that analyzes different technology industries and measures, what are the most impactful technologies, who are the leaders, what is the best. And they were the first to recognize the hype that happens with some technologies where the reality does not live up to that hype. So they created something called the Gartner hype cycle. And you can see they plot over time on the horizontal axis, expectations on the vertical axis. So there are 5 different categories or phases that you go through. You'll start with an innovation trigger, leading to something called the peak of inflated expectations, landing you down in the trough of disillusionment before you recover and go back up to the slope of enlightenment, and then ultimately leveling out in something called the plateau of productivity. So they're very wordy, sounds almost like something from a movie, but it's a very good way of analyzing and measuring technologies as they emerge and as they start getting adopted and used in the marketplace. So why is this important? We use this tool to really separate that hype from real things that will produce value in the marketplace. So there's promise, and then there's the delivery of that promise. And the delivery of the promise is really where the value creation happens. So let's focus on things that have enough value to them that they will live on in some fashion. By understanding what is a bubble versus what is real, ultimately you can save time, money, effort when you even invest resources towards any particular technology. So the analysts will put out their opinions, it will sort of get validated in the marketplace, and then ultimately, the ones that make the real decisions about where to throw money and resources and effort produces this outcome of sort of hopefully optimizing the delivery of new technologies. And again, it's just good to compare yourself to an objective analyst that has a little bit of an arm's length relationship to a technology. Even as a founder myself, I can tell you, you could get wrapped up and get very excited about something, but it's only when you get that external validation and somebody says, yes, this is real and there's real value to it, that you have a greater sense of confidence that that value creation is sustainable and will be well met in the marketplace. So let's very quickly just deconstruct that Gartner hype cycle, and we'll start with the innovation trigger. So this is a breakthrough. There's likely going to be some big news, and we'll announce that there's a new technology in the marketplace, and people will very, very quickly assess within each vertical industry, how does that technology impact my business? And with that, there will be a variety of uses of that technology, proofs of concept, and implementations that kind of show, yes, this is how we can use this technology in a productive way in the marketplace. Of course, the media and the public interest is really the trigger that gets it to that peak. So often the media will want to cover it. There are lots of journals out there that cover emerging technologies and so forth. Plus the companies that own or introduce the innovation trigger, they want to hype it as well. They basically have some expectations and some hopes that it will be met by the marketplace. So they will do their public relations, their PR releases and so forth, and try to tell the story about why this is valuable. Typically, again, this is a proof of concept. This is where you might hear of things like MVPs or prototypes, but there's not a real usable product yet. It's more in the planning and the ideation stage, and then some tease of a technology that you can play with, but not necessarily use in a scalable sort of way. And again, this is where we have not proven the commercial viability, and it needs to be sort of interacting in the marketplace, have users get some reaction to it, and then hopefully drive demand in the future. Okay, the next one is called that peak of inflated expectations. This is where you get buzz. You'll get it in your social media feeds. There'll be a variety of success stories. Maybe some celebrities will latch onto it and tell some very exciting stories. And a very common thing is some people will get that feeling of I'm missing out. How can I be part of it as well? The reality check is there are many, many failures from this stage, and that's okay. This is something where you're prototyping, but you have to be realistic about what's sustainable and what's a failure for forever. This is where some companies take action, dive in deeper. They might have gotten some validation in the marketplace and then start investing more heavily in building a more scalable solution or introducing some variants of it. But the reality check is many things will now collapse into what's called the trough of disillusionment. And so interest will wane in the marketplace. It's a hype, and the technology does not quite live up to the expectations of the marketplace or the marketing that's happening. And then maybe even the next new hype comes along and people just move on very quickly. The first movers will shake out or fail. So again, people will sort of assess what happened in that first thing. And there could be, honestly, quite a number of failures that just either shut down completely or pivot into a different business model. The big investment will only come with the learnings of what you did in that cycle, finding what worked, what didn't work, pivoting and adjusting, and then doing some sort of enhancement to the product. Now the hope is that you get to what's called the slope of enlightenment, that you've learned, you've started to recognize real benefits to the consumers, a real value proposition that could be delivered, and something that the consumers would want on an ongoing, sustainable basis, ultimately creating a real market demand for the product or for the company. Again, with the various iterations, you will have second or third generation products appearing as the companies iterate and make refinements or improvements. And ultimately, more money finally gets poured into that category because there is value that's recognized. And mind you, that that value might be recognized from one implementation, one company that did something, and then other companies are looking at it and saying, ah, that's how you do it. That's where you can extract value. So new market entrants could come in, as well as other entrants that failed and then needed a pivot will draw inspiration from the competition. At the same time, some laggard companies, maybe that spent too much money, got burnt by the fall into the trough of disillusionment, and they will still lag and remain cautious and not participate in that next cycle. Finally, the plateau of productivity. So this is now mass market adoption. We've truly found an implementation of a technology that the market is ready to accept, to use on a regular basis, get the value out of it. And now we can have sustainable growth in a new technology or industry. Now things will have shaken out. Some providers start getting recognized as the ones that will be there for the long run, while others will shake out that you just know they will not be participants in that plateau of productivity. And ultimately, this is where the real money is made. That market relevance leads to better revenues, better profit margins, and a sustainable way of implementing a technology that the market really needs. So before we go any further, why don't we just take a 2-minute break here that you can quickly scan if you have a mobile phone. And it's an open-ended question. Answer a very quick survey. Just give us your name. And then what technologies are you thinking about today that are exciting to you, that you were hoping maybe to hear about today, or just things that you want to work on within your company or your business? And I think it might be a fun conversation. So why don't we take, again, like it's a very quick thing, just give it about a minute. And hopefully you can scan, or Jeff, I don't know if you want to copy and paste the URL into the chat window as well, just that you have that. And like I said, it'll be a very quick survey, and then we'll have a very quick conversation about that.
Yeah, link is in the chat. Please use this link to participate in a very short survey.
And to be clear, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. It's just which emerging innovation that you're thinking about or reading about or seeing on television or online, which of these kind of sounds exciting and interesting to you. So again, no wrong answers here. We're just trying to get a sense of which of these innovations you guys think is exciting.
Okay, I think that was about a minute, so hopefully everybody was able to get to it. And you can raise your hand if you had any trouble. Now let's quickly look at the poll results here. And okay, we've had a interesting. So AI, the Chat GPT, EdTech, data analysis, robotics, Web3. Let's quickly.
If you're still entering an answer, that's okay. We still would welcome you to answer to the poll. There's 30 some people here, so let's hope we can get a couple more thoughts.
But just while we're sitting here, so I'm going to call on people in the audience. So Aidana, you say you're interested in AI. Is there a specific area of AI that's of interest to you, or an implementation you're involved in yourself?
Oh, I think the answers are not quite like connected. I indicated actually Web3.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Web3.
So yeah, how this like new technology can be like, how to say, intertwined with already like existing technology. So like, I mean, when we think about Web3, we think immediately about like crypto, blockchain, and also like blockchain related apps, mainly wallets or something, and due to like not so, how to say, worsening situation in the crypto right now, I think people are just like divided into two camps, like, okay, this is just like something temporary, Web3 actually is our future, it can be implemented, and the second camp is just like it's not really supporting that belief. So yeah, I'm kind of interested in that, like Web3 technology emergence, how it can be implemented to like improve maybe, I don't know, some existing issues. So for example, one of the beneficial like qualities was seen as DAO, right? Like decentralization. And the paradox is that Web3 is actually or like this blockchain is actually working through not decentralization, but like centralized apps like Binance or Coinbase. And yeah, so it's full of paradoxes, yet like experts keep saying that, well, this is like our future, we're moving towards that, but it's still so like unclear. So I'm kind of interested in your opinion on that.
Okay, excellent comments. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes. I understand that some of the names did not get lined up correctly to the technology. So just very quickly, who threw out or mentioned robotics? Just kind of curious about the robotics person.
That one was actually me.
Oh, okay, that was you.
Of all people, you picked me.
Well, and who talked about the chat GPT-3 or GPT?
It was me.
Okay. And who talked about biometrics?
It was me. Hi.
Okay. Anna, yes. What area of biometrics are you interested in?
Actually, I'm really interested in about biometrics because it allows the system to recognize users by biological markers, such as face, voice, or fingerprint, right? And I think it's kind of cool, and I think it's really interesting, and it's exciting.
Okay.
We actually have one company that Cal and I have worked with that identifies dogs. Imagine if you found a lost dog. You could take a photograph of the dog's nose, and their noses, a dog's nose is like a human's fingerprint. It's unique, and it's a biometric identifier. So you can find, they can create a registry of dogs whereby photos of their noses, if they get lost, you can return them to their rightful owner. So biometrics is very interesting. And of course, we think about it a lot in human terms with fingerprints and eyes, but with dogs and cats as well, photographs of their nose, very high quality photographs of their nose, can be unique biometric identifiers.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's a very interesting company.
Cool.
So the great thing, you will see now on the next slide, we'll jump ahead. As we think about the hype curve, this is now the official Gartner hype curve for 2022. They've not released 2023 yet, but a lot of the things that you all put on the list are actually on this curve. And I know this might be a little bit harder to read, so we'll kind of go through it, but they have different types of AI. AI as a category is on there multiple times. You'll see things like, Web3 and so forth. And so this is an actual implementation of this year's hype curve. And you can see, again, it's broken up, which ones are early at the innovation trigger. You can see now at the peak of inflated expectations. I've got my little magnifying glass there, but the decentralized identity, NFT, and cloud data ecosystems are the three that are just on the decline and heading towards the trough of disillusionment. And so we're not going to spend too much time on this. At the end, we'll give you a link so you'll be able to download a document that kind of summarizes everything that's on the hype cycle for this year. And the other thing I just wanted to call out is the color coding for each of the dots, because each of the dots has a different color code. That if you see an orange triangle, for example, that's something that the timeline for adoption is more than 10 years out. Most of them, a lot of them are either 2 to 5 years, less than 2 years, or 5 to 10 years. So even understanding what the adoption rate will be within a specific technological sector is critical, so you can sort of plan out implementations and sort of a path for your company that leaves you viable and relevant. But now that we're here and thinking about things that are heading towards the trough of disillusionment, why don't we double click on NFTs, just because they have clearly been in the news a lot. And to me, it's one of the epitomes of that peak of inflated expectations that we literally have been living through. So most of you might already know, but just to be clear, that NFT is a unique digital identifier that has a one-of association with potentially a physical asset or another digital asset. and you cannot copy it, you cannot substitute it, you cannot divide it. It's on the blockchain, of course, it's a public record, and it basically can certify authenticity, ownership, and on the surface of that description, you can certainly see that there is value to that potentially if you had an open ledger that can guarantee authenticity and ownership and so forth. So that's where we start. And then there's that technological backbone that supports it in a couple of different implementations. But this is where the breakthrough happened. It was probably, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years ago. And we saw things like this. So Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey's first tweet on Twitter became an NFT, that there was a certificate of authenticity, and it sold for almost $3 million US. So does anybody want to venture a guess? You can put it in the chat window, what it might be worth today. I don't see any chats coming in, so I'm going to jump ahead. And so this was from November. These are a couple of news releases that happened, where the best offer now was less than $100, just $96 for a tweet that was originally valued at $2.9 million. So in not a lot of time, whoever bought that tweet lost a lot of value. And again, it begs the question, is there real value in the NFT of a tweet? If you know, Jack Dorsey's first tweet is still on Twitter, you can take a screenshot and frame it, and it's not the same as having a certificate. But the value proposition is considered dubious. What happens in the future, we will remains to be seen. But this is now telling us that this might be sending us to that trough of disillusionment. Now, there were several other examples of this. I mean, literally hundreds and thousands. Justin Bieber bought a Bored Ape NFT for 1.3 million. And at the time of this writing, they're estimating that it's worth $70,000. So it again had a big collapse. Logan Paul, who's another celebrity here, bought one for $623,000, now worth $10. So this is, to me, the perfect epitome of that trough of disillusionment, where, again, NFT was implemented in a certain way. They started to commercialize, I suppose you would call it art, and just did not have the sustainability to maintain or grow that value. And one more example that literally just happened is the former president in the United States came out with his own digital trading cards that made him out to be a superhero. And he sold NFT trading cards of himself for $99 each. And the surprising thing was that this NFT collection sells out. He raised $4.5 million US, and there was enough demand at that initial release to basically create this demand. What this series of slides does not show is that this is literally changing day by day, that some of these are now worth, I think, something like 30 cents on the dollar. So while it sold out and it created that hype, the bubble is quickly deflating on this one as well. So to me, the perfect metaphor for this is the Dutch tulip bulb example from the Netherlands. And there was something called tulip mania. And it happened during what was called the Dutch Golden Age. And it is actually the first recorded speculative bubble in our modern society. Basically, people started buying and trading and collecting bulbs for flowers. And the contract pricing, people got very excited about them. In the year 1634, And then there was a dramatic collapse in February of 1637. So it was about a 3-year cycle. And tell me if this sounds a little bit like what we're experiencing today in some of these technology bubbles. Bulbs sold for 10 times the annual wage of a skilled artisan. So if you think about a skilled artisan in the 1600s and compare them to a coder in the year 2022, it almost mirrors the same thing. So for 10 times the annual salary of a coder, you could have bought an NFT that was, collected by, some people out there. And so this serves as such a wonderful proxy of human behavior reacting the exact same way today as 400 years ago. And it is such a powerful way for us to learn about some of these speculative bubbles and thinking about it in the context of that Gartner hype cycle. So
I think that's a great,
yeah.
I think that's a great transition from those examples of the NFTs having at one moment in time a lot of value and now having much, much less value, losing nearly 99% of the value. And I think you have to start to ask yourself when you're looking at these various technologies, whichever of the technologies, some of us put robotics, some of us put artificial intelligence, some put the chat GPT, different technologies, as they're emerging, we get caught up in that hype cycle of the technologies. But you have to start asking yourself, is this technology solving a real customer problem? So if you're thinking, as you're sitting here today, about creating an innovation, maybe creating a startup, always start with the problem. What is the problem out in the marketplace that people are experiencing that they need to find a solution for? So the next bullet is really addressing, does your innovation, whatever it may be, and it could be any of the ones we've discussed here up until this point in the discussion, or any other ones that maybe some of you are thinking you want to create a really cool and innovative startup. Is there a real value proposition? Basically, is the value that your innovation or any innovation is creating and delivering, is it real? Do people really benefit from the innovation? Do they reap or experience some unique value from using the innovation that they don't get from other areas of technology or other opportunities or competitors in the market? And then the next one grows on further and says, is there a mass market demand? An innovation isn't interesting if it solves one or two people's problem. It's interesting for society if it solves lots of people's problem and delivers real value to lots and lots of people. That's what makes an innovation really powerful, is when there's a mass market demand. And sometimes people don't know what they want in innovation. So demand doesn't have to come from people, from surveying. For example, probably before the iPhone existed in 2007, none of us would have imagined, the iPhone as we all use it today, or Android, which is really just similar device, just a different operating system. But it all of a sudden became a mass market demand. And then once you assess if there's market demand, you have to think, how long will it take for the market to adopt it? Now, Aidana, I don't mean to call out your comment earlier, but you made a reference in the chat window about the metaverse being, it surprised you how far away on the technology hype curve the metaverse is looking, like more than 10 years out. So the adoption timeline for the metaverse is quite a long time. And if you think about it, even looking at the image on the right, you see this young person wearing this headset. So imagine the society at large. We're not all going to be walking around wearing headsets. So I think the metaverse and technologies like virtual reality and things of that sort are trying to figure out, how do they get mass market demand when the mass market isn't going to be walking around wearing these headsets? How can we deliver that value proposition, but maybe in a different form factor than the current form factor that's delivering that experience, which is this immersive headset? So you have to think about, whatever your innovation, how long will it take for the mass market to demand it, and to adopt it. And then the last piece of this is, what are the trends in society that are driving innovation? So if you think about, for example, I used the example of the iPhone or Android, excuse me, everyone today is walking around with a device, a phone. And that device has a lot of capability and functionality. It can tell people where you are. It can allow you to make payments. It has so much more functionality than that. But just those two trends, everybody walking around with a device, and that device being able to tell people where you are and allow you to make payment, that enabled something like Uber or Grab, or depending on what part of the world you're in, but all these ride-hailing services, they followed the trends. They realized people didn't generally enjoy riding in taxis, which were not necessarily exciting or comfortable, but they got you from point A to point B. And once everybody was walking around with these devices that could tell somebody exactly where you are, you could indicate back to them in the app where you want to go, and you can make payment for it. It even erased the need for language. I myself have been in many, many countries where I don't speak the native language, and maybe some of the taxi drivers didn't speak English, which was what I was able to speak in. But because of Uber and similar technologies that followed the trends, they were able to make innovation that erased the need for language barriers, or erased the language barriers, and allowed those kinds of things to happen. So with any of these innovation ideas that you might have, these are the real questions that need to be considered when you're evaluating them. Do they answer a problem? Do they have real value? Is the mass market interested? Will it be adopted quickly enough for me to make money so that I could further develop and support the idea? And does it fit and align with the trends in society and in industry? So these are all very important considerations going on here. If you're thinking about it, a lot of people on the hype curve, when a new technology is announced, everybody just follows the technology. They look at what people are thinking, and they, again, have to come back to the basic questions. Does it align with emerging trends? Will people adopt it? Could it hit some kind of viral nature where lots and lots of people are starting to look at it? And when they start to look at it, will it stick? In the last couple of weeks, we have seen ChatGPT or OpenAI, the artificial intelligence tools that are being used now worldwide for writing and helping people to write better and to learn about different topics. Will this stick? Will it deliver a real value proposition? And most importantly, even if you can articulate and express or describe what you think the value proposition might be, the real question is, will it really be achieved? Will it be realized? Will people really get that value that you suggest or believe they can get from a different technology? So these are all really important things, and we're going to shift a little bit and discuss a few of the immersive experiences, basically around, again, something along the ideas of metaverse. First, we're going to talk about the different drivers of the technology. So thinking about each of these individual technologies, there are several technologies or concepts of technology that are related to immersive experiences. For example, and Cal highlighted that decentralized identity is one of those technologies that's up near the top of the hype curve, but heading down towards the trough of disillusionment. We don't know if it will stick yet. We'll find out. But decentralized identity, this allows an individual or an entity to be identified in a verifiable, persistent way without the centralized registry. So thinking about blockchain, we hear blockchain as a technology is very decentralized. Some people are now looking to the technologies like that to enable verifiable identity across that blockchain. It's verifiable. It's something called immutable. It cannot be changed once it's out there. So this is a technology. Again, will it endure? Will it reach the slope of enlightenment and grow and become part of our society? We don't know at the moment. We'll find out over time. Similarly, with digital humans. Now, these are, imagine again, we're going to talk in a moment about the metaverse, but thinking about these human, kind of almost like an avatar, right? We can create these avatars that represent ourselves, represent others. Everyone else can create their own version of a digital human. They look and they behave like humans. They feel like humans. They can have conversations. Will this kind of existence persist over the long term? As with all of these, we don't know the answer to that yet. Some of them probably will. As Cal's examples of NFTs, we're starting to see that NFTs, even though there's lots of hype, lots of money being invested, we're starting to see that sometimes, in some cases at least, it's starting to erode and starting to fall away in terms of delivering real value. So the metaverse is something Facebook has spent billions and billions of dollars trying to deliver. And it's basically a virtual reality, a new kind of world where people can interact with others. This technology, I know now we call it the metaverse, and it's on the hype curve. It's kind of coming up the beginning of the hype curve out of innovation and starting to gain a lot of press and lots of stories, lots of people discussing the metaverse. So it's still in a very early stages of the hype curve. But the reality is there's a product out in the marketplace called Second Life that's been around for nearly 2 decades. And it's a very similar, it's not called the metaverse, but Second Life is, again, something that's been out for nearly 2 decades. I mean, if you think about how long the concept of the metaverse, not the metaverse by its name as we think about it today, but the concept of this has existed for nearly 2 decades, for most of the 2000s. Actually, I think it emerged in 2002. So it's really been around a very, very long time. And it did garner a lot of followers, and it was kind of on the hype curve for a while, but then it kind of faded away. Technology has advanced, as it always does. And now the metaverse is being heavily, heavily invested into to potentially create not just a virtual kind of fun and entertaining environment, but they envision it really even changing the way people around the world work and interact with each other. So we'll find out, again, as with all of these, if it lasts and has stickiness, as they say, over the long term. Similarly, when we look at, here it is. I'm sorry, I'll go back. So they've spent over almost $40 billion building the metaverse up until this point. That is a massive amount of money being invested. And do we know if it will survive? We don't know. I mean, right now, most people's experience of the metaverse, again, in anything with VR, is having to, having to wear one of those headsets so that you kind of close out the real world and you kind of move into the virtual world. But look at the amount of money that just one company, Meta, or Facebook's parent company, Meta, has invested in creating this new metaverse world that they really hope will change the way we exist and interact with each other across the world. Moving on to digital twin. Think about a digital twin. Imagine if we created a digital version of, say, the city you're in, whatever city you're each in now. Imagine if we created a digital version that had all the buildings, it had all of the systems of the infrastructure like red lights and road signals for traffic signals and things. Think about, think about creating a virtual representation of these real world things, whether it's buildings, whether it's manufacturing processes or manufacturing plants that are manufacturing items. Digital twins allow us to create these things. We can look and apply historical data to them to give them some sense of history and knowledge and context. We can then look at them in the present to see how do they operate, and maybe population trends are shifting from one city to the next. How will my city fare when we move more population into it? We can simulate what the future might look like because it's an actual digital representation of the present. And we can then therefore start to do scenario analysis using these digital twins to predict what might the future look like. Would we need to, if we have more population shifts into a city, would we need to build the city out? Will it get too congested? Will it get too much traffic? Will things not function properly because of the way population is moving in and it's not prepped or ready to handle that type of population. So all of these things can be simulated, and it uses real data. So it's actually based in reality, in that it can use real-time data, it can use historical data, and it can even simulate into the future using additional data. So these are very powerful representations that allow people, urban planners in my example, to plan out the future cities that we will all ultimately live in. Shifting gears a little bit to what Cal had spoken about earlier, again, an NFT is really something that, again, is immutable, meaning it cannot be copied or changed or modified in any way. It is recorded in that decentralized blockchain, and that is the thing that allows everybody to certify either who owns it or the authenticity of it. Because it's decentralized, it requires tremendous, it gives tremendous validation, because it requires potentially thousands and thousands of people who are confirming and authenticating and verifying something. You could never change all of those people's thing to kind of shift something. So the beauty of decentralization is that it enhances the verification and validation and the authenticity of something. Will that add real value in time? We'll find out. It's still to be determined. But if looking at some of the examples that Cal spoke about earlier, it's not clear that just having the capability of an NFT adds real value. There's a value proposition. People think that it not being able to be changed and being validated or authenticated is bringing great value. That's part of the value proposition. The real question, as we spoke about a few minutes ago, is that value truly being realized? Are people actually getting the value from what they thought was a good value proposition? Another technology that is incorporated within this immersive experience trend is the super app. And think of a super app as an app that does many, many different things. We make the reference to it being like the Swiss Army knife of apps. It does a ton of different things, and you can use it for so many different purposes. In China, WeChat is one of these apps. It's a super app. It does so many things. In Korea, they have Kakao. It's very similar. These are super apps that don't just do one thing. They do so many things. They can allow you to do shopping. They can allow you to do ride hailing. They can allow you to do peer-to-peer monetary transfers. Several of these apps that are emerging are starting to incorporate so much functionality, they really become kind of the main application that people in these locations use. And then lastly is Web3. Somebody brought up the idea of Web3 earlier. And this is really, again, incorporating a lot of these different technologies around blockchain and decentralization for all the benefits and things that I've spoke about earlier. And, you know, at the core of it, we will find out, for example, if cryptocurrency is a good idea or not. But the underlying technology of cryptocurrency is blockchain and decentralization. So we may find out that use cases of these technologies may or may not stick and have long-term viability or sustainability. But the underlying technologies may actually be pivoted. That's a word we use a lot in the startup world, is pivot. It's where you think one thing is going to be your idea, but then you realize through life lessons and learning and the opportunity to experience it in reality, maybe you need to pivot and shift what you're thinking. So perhaps some of these underlying technologies, such as Web3 and blockchain, will be able to sustain into the long term, but perhaps the use cases will have to shift or pivot based on what we've experienced to date, where we thought it was a good use case. Maybe it will be a good use case, maybe it won't be. But I think in these cases, I do believe the underlying technology of blockchain and decentralization will give us great value into the future in ways we probably don't even know as we sit here today. Cal, anything you would want to add to any of those just before we shift?
No, I think we're good. I mean, if we can quickly double click on Web3 just as an example, and I'll go ahead and kind of run with this. Just as a reminder that Web3 is a big umbrella for an entire technological movement, but even that has a lot of sub features underneath it that sort of are associated with Web3. So I'm going to quickly go through here. The semantic web. So you use much more natural language to communicate. You know, the Chat GPT is a good example of sort of that semantic language thing. Driven by AI, you will have a much smarter browser, if you will, that's interacting with you and helping you navigate the World Wide Web. Again, it supports a VR experience by having 3D graphics native within the browser experience as well. The idea is that it's connected and it's ubiquitous, meaning wherever you are connected to this Web3. So you can quickly and easily transport yourself from your laptop to your mobile phone to your smart appliances in your kitchen, potentially. So basically, wherever you go, this Web3 experience is. Of course, like Jeff said, it is blockchain based, basically meaning it's an open distributed ledger, that it's not centralized, but that you can have clear visibility into all kinds of systems of record and show ownership and accountability and so forth. And then lastly, it's decentralized. It's not one central repository of data, you know, sitting at you know, Twitter or Facebook or anything. It's more empowering to the user, so it's decentralized. So one question to all of you is this a no-brainer? Is Web3 going to happen in this way? Because when you look at this list, it's a great thing. Anybody want to volunteer any thoughts on Web3? And if not, I'm happy to keep going here, because the point is Web3 has gotten the lion's share of the hope. But guess what? There is already a competitor to Web3. And just because of who's behind it, it still remains to be seen. So Sir Tim Berners-Lee, if you don't know who that is, you should, and he's definitely worth a Google search. He is the father of the internet. He is a very tenured researcher, analyst, scientist that was there from an early stage. He's collaborating with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, as well as others, on something that's called Solid Project. And so their argument is that Web3, as defined by this consortium group, is fine, but it is not decentralized enough. And while they incorporate all those things as well, they have a completely different schema and architecture for decentralization. And even in the last couple of days, again, he was in the news. He's gotten a little bit vocal about, you know, some of the interesting things going on with Twitter, for example. And he's again espousing his values and a decentralized model that he thinks will be more beneficial to individual consumers. So as we sit here today, pondering the future, we have to analyze and understand, what does Web3 do and not do versus Solid. I mean, frankly, Web3 is in the lead now because there's much more money that's been thrown at it. But just because of who's behind the Solid project, we have to take it seriously and study what the adoption rate is. It's, again, as we learned from the hype curve, it's like the tortoise and the hare. Just because the hare got off to the faster start, it does not make it the winner at the end. And so that just makes the job of people like us all that much more interesting, because as students of the whole thing playing out, we have to watch and observe and see which one is more poised to become the dominant technology standard for a specific consumer need. So I would suggest you keep that similar mindset for any other projects that you have, to think about, this is great, but what else is out there? Be very, very focused on the competitive landscape, the emerging technologies, things you can research, you know, just by doing a Google search, by doing a patent filing search. You know, there's Google Patents where you can very quickly find out what other projects are going on within any specific technological vertical. And just knowing what else is out there, which could be poised to outmaneuver or outflank whatever you know, incumbent there is, it's absolutely critical in this day and age to do that. Okay, one more fun interactive poll. And now this one's just, again, a quick multiple choice where we're going to talk a little about the immersive experience technology drivers that we just went through. I'd love to hear from you and quickly vote. Again, you don't even have to type for this one, just click a button and we'll see what the results are. And we'll just quickly get a sense for at least this group where the excitement lies. Jeff,
And
did you
I
have
have
anything
put
else
the
to add?
poll. No, I
Okay.
put the poll link. If your QR code isn't scanning for any reason, I've put the link into the chat window. And as Cal said, it's just a quick multiple choice. We just want to get a sense. Again, we have about 27 participants. Let's hope we can get a good handful of people responding. Again, the idea is just which of the technologies that we've just described and talked about for the last few minutes, which of them are kind of exciting for you? Which ones are most interesting to each of you?
And we'll give you like a minute or so to quickly give us an answer.
While you guys are answering that, I'm going to share that in the 3D world, like talking a little bit about Meta and the requirement currently to wearing these headsets, there's some innovations coming out now in a technology called light field 3D display. And light field 3D display is giving 3D experiences in different display technologies. So think about your television, for example. You're looking at a TV that's really two-dimensional. But in the new technologies that are emerging around light field 3D displays, you can actually have a three-dimensional, very immersive type experience with somebody. And that kind of VR experience that we see in our headsets when we do it today, it's now being brought to flat screens where you don't require the headset. Now, one of the biggest challenges that VR has had is the requirement for the headset. A lot of people don't want to walk around with that headset on. And so light field 3D display has a value proposition of being able to bring about this immersive experience without the requirement for that kind of a 3D headset. We hope in the future that that actually can be realized and become a sticky type of technology that persists. Hey, Donna, it looks like you have a hand up for a question.
Yeah, it's just is curious to know, so it's like, since
Sure.
you're expert in the accelerators, yeah, I believe so. So have you ever fallen yourselves a victim for this like hype cycle while managing like a startup or like your own business?
I was
Jeff,
going to
you wanna
joke
go
and
first?
say Cal. I was going to joke and say Cal was the one who bought Jack Dorsey's first tweet, but he didn't buy the first tweet. I would say yes. I think, we're just like everyone else. We like to imagine the possibilities of different technologies, and we certainly think some things are going to work. I thought VR was going to be much bigger 10 years ago, probably, when I first saw headsets coming out. And now I've learned over time, seeing how society engages that technology, I understand better the challenges of it. But I really thought it was going to change things. When I first put on a VR headset, it kind of blew my mind. I mean, I was like, wow, I thought it was incredible. And I still, to this day, I do think it's incredible. But I realized the challenges that it being linked to this headset that everybody has to wear is going to make it take a lot longer. So VR technology was one I got caught up in. I personally also made several investments in battery technology, knowing that batteries power everything we are all walking around with. Everybody's always running from power slot, socket in the wall to plug socket. So I've invested in some early stage innovative battery technologies that have gone away. They haven't survived. They died along the hype curve, if you will. So those are just a couple examples that come to my mind. I don't know, Cal, if you have your other examples.
Yeah, I will give one example that I was very deep into. And one thing I will say is that we have a phrase from our university alma mater, always a student. And it is a humbling reminder that you need to always be a student and grow and learn. And in fact, we're going to touch on that in our next talk on the 27th. So hopefully you'll be there for that. But it's the point that even what we're telling you here today, I'm telling you stuff that I wish I had known 5 or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. because it is a good critical way of thinking. And yes, so because we didn't have this framework of being a little bit more critical, we did fall down the rabbit hole. So in the late 1990s, a very long time ago, when I was working at Wells Fargo Bank, we were plotting out the future of electronic cash, taking out paper bills from a monetary system. And we were working with a bank out of the UK called, well, the technology was called Mondex. And it was a chip card technology. And it was designed that you can make peer-to-peer payments and so forth. Sound familiar? But we were planning this in the late 90s, actually predating, PayPal and Venmo and companies like that. And we actually plotted out the timeline. We said, we know this is going to take a long time, but you know what? By the year 2010, Mondex will be renowned the world over. Everybody will be using it. And we will usher in the next generation of money exchange. Well, our optimistic projection that by 2010, we've replaced paper money didn't happen. 2010, we still had paper money. We're there now. I mean, at least, most of the people I know do not use cash at all. And so missing that, basically saying, oh yes, by the 2010, we're going to be there, we missed the mark. The technology spun out. It became an independent company called Mondex. It eventually got acquired by MasterCard, where it died a painful death and was never implemented. And so we missed the mark. We were so excited and so confident, but again, it serves as an excellent lesson for all of us as to, even if you're excited, part of you should still be critical and challenge yourself to say, this will fail if, this will succeed if, and just always be aware of what are the key drivers that will lead to that success or failure. Okay, why don't we quickly go to the poll? I'm going to update here. Did everybody vote? Oh, look at that. We have one really, really big winner. A third of the people said digital humans. And I should note, I'm colorblind. So Jeff, why don't you tell me what the 25% is?
Decentralized identity and digital humans for the top.
Decentralized identity. So anybody that voted, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What gets you excited about, let's start with decentralized identity. Is there a specific implementation, a certain use case that gets you excited? How do you see it playing out? Anyone?
Come on, who voted for this one? Someone share some of your thoughts about decentralized identity or digital humans.
There's no right answer.
Don't be shy.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I voted for digital humans, actually. Yeah. This is pretty exciting since like how to say, I'm still like in my early 20s right now, and when the movie Avatar came out, like and like similar like sci-fi films like tech related, this like this kind of like related films came out when I was like only like 10 years old. It was like kind of cool. It was just like something that could be only how to say, because it could only exist in imagination. But to be honest, I've never heard of this term before. I knew about this technology, but today I got to know about it. It's like, oh, it's called digital humans. I think this is quite, how to say, very exciting technology in a sense of like, I'm thinking about, let's say, mental health. This is a very trendy topic from like for recent years, like let's say 5 years. And the core of that, the gist of that problem comes down that there is like little interaction between people right now, and they all want like some kind of closure from their family or friends, but the paradox is still there. Even with the emergence of like social media, it's kind of becoming like more, I'd say, it's kind of worsening. And maybe with this technology, I don't know, it could be implemented in that area as well. I see it in from this angle. And I'm pretty sure there are many more angles for the implementation. Yeah, kind of, that's why I voted for this option.
Very
Thank
good.
you,
Thank you,
Aidana.
Aidana.
That's a really good example of how this technology is emerging. And I'll give an example of something we've seen with respect to digital human and mental health. You give a good example, a very good example of mental health. And one of the challenges with mental health for a lot of people is it's embarrassing. They don't know kind of how to seek the help they get because they have personal concerns, embarrassments, or what have you. That's a very common thing with people who have mental health, is that one of the biggest reasons they don't get it is the help for it is it's a little bit embarrassing to go seek help and admit that you have these issues, these mental health challenges. So one of the things we're seeing with Digital Human is virtual therapy. Because you can create a virtual you and anonymously seek the mental health that will benefit you. And that it removes a lot of the embarrassment, right? It's easier for me to seek help when it's not, then nobody realizes it's me seeking help. So I can go about getting the access to the help and care that the mental health support that I maybe need without having to disclose that it's me. And Digital Human and avatar type stuff is something that's contributing to that. So we actually think these technologies, again, just sticking with your example of mental health, they even have the opportunity to really add great value and allow more people to seek the kind of support and mental health assistance that they may benefit from in a way that doesn't compromise who they are. Their decentralized identity, right? Doesn't have to focus on who they are. They're still able to access that care and hopefully get the benefits of the mental health support just by being able to use these kinds of digital human avatar type of creations. Anyone else have an example they want to share? Just one additional example? Well, you guys are shy. Come on, someone. Any thoughts at all? No rights, no wrongs.
On any of those, you can even come in and defend and talk about ones that didn't get as many votes, because sometimes the ones that are low in popularity now might end up being the dominant technologies in the future. So this is a good time to put on your futurist hat and tell us why you think any of these technologies will be key.
Hello.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi.
Yes,
Bakar.
we can hear you.
Hi. I was the one who asked about the decentralized identity top startups. So I was just looking at it, and I'm currently working on online digital ticketing startup. So one of the use cases I thought of using this decentralized identity was maybe when going to the events, concerts or clubs or so on, you may be able to easily transfer your data with the venue, and it can check if you have a ticket, who you are, how old you are, and so on and so forth. So I was working on the case like that, and how do you see if it will be able to do it, if this system, and if it should be used or not at all?
Jeff, did you have any thoughts, or should I kind of jump in?
If you've got some thoughts, go.
Yeah, I'll go quickly here. So the one thing I would say is, what problem are you solving? So if you're able to provide more information to the venue, is there a problem that's being solved for the consumer? Is it a problem that's being solved for the venue? My first impulse, maybe I'm also older, is like, well, it's the venue, it's not their business. I just want to be let in. So they just need to know I have a valid ticket. As you have that richer data set of the ticket, the concert goer, what's the purpose of that? How do you personalize the experience? So we haven't really talked about that. That'd be my one challenge on that.
Yeah, it's a bit of specific because I have worked on it. So I just thought maybe the entrance can be faster, the face identification and ID identification can be faster. So if you had a valid ticket, can be checked in seconds. And also the venues can get the insight about what people are visiting them, and maybe customer retention and so on and so forth. And one of the maybe future type of uses was hotel. I was working on no contact hotel system where the people could just identify with their phones with NFC maybe, and exchange data with the hotels to see who was visiting, if he had the reservation, and so on and so forth. So basically, just working on fast exchange of the information. So
Got it.
And I think decentralized identity does it.
Yeah, so we use an entire framework called customer discovery or customer development. You probably have heard of it. And that is the kind of thing that you've got some good hypotheses in there. Now, if you go out and maybe interview some hotel operators, some hotel patrons, some concert operators, some patrons, and so forth, you can understand, you know, their needs, their problems, and the experiences they have, long lines and so forth. And that's how we can sort of start going through the exercise of validating the market need for some of these technologies. I think we're getting a nudge that we need to move on. So why don't we very quickly, we'll share this link as well. We can put that into the chat window. This is a guide that we have that all the things that are on the hype curve, because that hype curve chart that we showed you basically just have the words. Here are very quick definitions of, you know, there's probably like, you know, 36 different things on the hype curve right now. And it's a very easy to use cheat sheet to understand some of those technologies. And then obviously, you know, next year there'll be a different set as well, but grab that link or scan it. And then with that, I think we can jump to the Q&A, and I will have to excuse myself here, and Jeff will handle the Q&A part. So thank you for
Cal.
Thank you, Cal. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was incredible as always. And yeah, we have 2 minutes for Q&A, and please ask the questions. You have a great opportunity to get very valuable feedback. But before we'll move to the question and answer, I would like to ask all of our participants to switch on your cameras and make one joint photo. Please switch on your cameras, and we will make one joint photo for. Yeah, please.
Zeus, over to you.
Please switch on your cameras, and we'll make one photo, joint photo. Yes, you will be able, Aidana, to get the emails of Jeff and Cal. Yeah, they will put it into the chat box. Yeah, if you may, Jeff, provide your email.
Yeah, I've just placed them in there. Yep.
Yeah, please, for one photo, please
Okay.
switch on your
Taking
cameras.
photo in 3, 2, 1, smile.
Once again, Jeff, thank you very much for this very, very interesting workshop. You could contact to the Jeff and Cal by the email. Also, I would like to provide you with short information about our next steps. And as we mentioned, there is already started the registration for CAREC University Startup Generator project and competition. There is a very, very nice prizes for competition, and you could participate in it. We provided the link to the this challenge and project in chat, but I would like to ask to paste it again. The registration is starting on 15th of December and will be till February 1. But before, we'll have very interesting events, and on December 27th, there will be second training of Jeff and Cal, and we'll share information with you. And I think you will be glad to listen to it, because it's always very useful and important for your future development. Yeah, once again, thank you very much for your time. I know that in some part of the world, it's already very late time, especially in China and Mongolia and Pakistan. And see you during our next events. Thank you all the organizers, and once again, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you all very, very much. I appreciated your time and look forward to seeing you again next week.
Yeah, bye.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone, thank you.